Welcome back to the deep dive. So if you're joining us today, I'm guessing there's a reason, maybe you felt it, that morning stiffness that makes those first few steps a real chore.
Or that dull ache that just sort of flares up after a long day.
Exactly. Or maybe you've heard that.
Yeah.
That sound, that very distinctive grinding or cracking when you bend your knee. And if you're, pushing past 45 or 50, these are often the classic signs, the telltale signs of knee osteoarthritis or OA.
Right.
So for this deep dive, we took a really extensive look at a whole stack of sources. We're talking clinical guidelines, research articles, expert recommendations.
All of it. Anything focused on managing and really living well with knee OA.
Yeah, and our mission today is pretty simple. We want to cut through all the noise out there and just deliver the most actionable, strategic knowledge you need. Think of this as your well-informed shortcut.
That's absolutely right. We want to move beyond just the basics. The goal here is for you to understand the strategy behind managing OA effectively. We're covering the whole spectrum.
The whole thing.
From immediate relief to targeted exercise, which can feel really counterintuitive for a lot of people, and then all the way up through the medical options like specialized injections and surgery.
Okay, so let's start with a clear understanding of the enemy, so to speak. At its core, what are we really dealing with when we talk about knee OA?
Well, it's fundamentally a mechanical issue. Your knee joint relies on this smooth protective layer called cartilage.
That's the shock absorber, right?
Exactly. It's the cushion between the bones.
Oh, wow.
And OA is simply what happens when that cartilage starts to wear away over time. When that cushion is gone or thinned out,
The bones can rub?
the bones can start to rub. And that leads to the 4 big symptoms. You get the pain, the swelling, the stiffness, and that very notable detail you mentioned, that grinding sound or sensation. Medically, they call that crepitus.
And the sources are, they're completely unanimous on who is most susceptible to this. The risk factors create a very clear profile.
They really do. We're talking about people over 45, 50 years old, those with a higher body weight, a history of old knee injuries.
Even old sports sprains from high school.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Those can come back to haunt you.
Yeah.
And critically, and this is a big one, weak muscles surrounding the leg.
And that last one, the weak muscles, that's a point we're going to keep circling back to because that is where you have the most control.
Precisely. Which brings us right to the most powerful tool you have in your toolbox, recognizing those symptoms early.
It's so easy for people to just dismiss mild discomfort as, oh, I'm just getting old. But the research highlights these very specific, mild symptoms that are basically flashing warning signs for early stage OA.
They are.
You really need to look out for knee pain that's mild but specifically noticeable when you're actually walking or doing some light activity.
And the timing of the stiffness is another huge diagnostic clue. So if you wake up with morning stiffness, but it goes away pretty quickly, say within 5 to 10 minutes, that is a classic early indicator.
Which is different from other inflammatory conditions where it can last for hours.
Miles different, yeah. With OA, you also see this pattern of pain that crops up after you've been sitting for a long time. The joint is basically seizing up from being inactive.
So why the big push for urgency? Why act so early? If the symptoms are mild, why not just wait and see?
Because early action gives you the absolute best chance to intervene before the structural damage really accelerates. At this stage, you have the maximum potential to strengthen the muscles around the joint, reduce that inflammatory pressure,
and just slow the whole thing down.
You can significantly slow the progression of that mechanical wear and tear. It's all about delaying that, that inevitable downhill slide for as long as you possibly can. Waiting. Well, waiting just guarantees you'll have to manage much more advanced symptoms later on.
That sets a really strong mandate for being proactive. But, okay, let's say you're listening right now and your knee is just throbbing. Let's talk immediate relief. What did the sources say for quick pain management?
We can start with temperature, because it's non-invasive and it's super effective if you use it correctly.
Right, the old hot versus cold debate.
And the rule is simple. You use ice specifically for swelling, and that acute pain right after an activity. It reduces inflammation, it numbs the area.
Okay, so ice for swelling.
And you use heat, like a warm compress, for stiffness. Especially first thing in the morning, it just helps loosen everything up, the muscles, the tissues around the joint. The key is not to confuse the two.
That distinction is so important.
Yeah.
Now, moving to over-the-counter options, acetaminophen is frequently mentioned as a good first choice for general OA pain relief. But then you have the NNS, like ibuprofen. Where do they fit in?
NSAIDs are, well, they're very effective. They're powerful anti-inflammatories. But our sources really advise that they should only be used with professional medical guidance for OA.
Why is that?
The context is just critical here. While they fight the pain and inflammation, long-term use, which you often need in a chronic condition like OA, carries some pretty well-documented risks. We're talking about gastrointestinal side effects, potential kidney issues.
So if the oral NSAIDs are risky for long-term use, what about the topicals, the creams and the gels?
That's where the strategy shifts. Topical options, things like capsaicin cream or diclofenac gel, they let you target the inflammation locally,
Yeah.
right where the pain is, without putting that same systemic strain on your stomach or your kidneys.
So it's a safer foundation for daily aches.
For localized knee pain, absolutely. They often provide enough relief, and it's a much safer way to manage things day to day than just constantly reaching for the pill bottle.
And beyond the pharmacy, what about simple strategic things at home? Daily routine adjustments that can provide some comfort and protection.
Oh, the daily routine matters immensely. I mean, besides the hot and cold therapy, think about using a knee support or a flexible brace during activity. It just gives you that immediate biomechanical stability.
Little things too, like posture.
Huge. Simple postural adjustments help. Sleeping with a pillow specifically under your knees can reduce tension at night. And maybe the most important thing, avoid positions that force extreme bending of the joint.
What does that mean in practice?
It means absolutely steering clear of sitting on the floor, deep kneeling, or doing deep squats in your day-to-day life.
Avoiding those habits just makes sense. You're reducing the load.
Yeah.
But now we have to get to the most counterintuitive, but also the most powerful part of this movement. The sources are crystal clear. Exercise is medicine for knee arthritis. How do you convince someone that moving a painful knee is actually the right thing to do?
Yep. It's the hardest hurdle to clear, psychologically. I really think so. When a joint hurts, our instinct is to protect it.
Right, stop moving it.
Just stop moving. But that is a trap. It leads to muscle atrophy, the muscles get weaker, which in turn puts more pressure on the already damaged joint.
So we're not asking you to go run a marathon.
Not at all. We're asking you to strengthen the scaffolding around the damaged joint.
Okay.
Think of the muscles in your thigh, your quads, your hamstrings as a natural suspension system for your knee.
I love that analogy, building a better suspension system.
If they are strong, they absorb the shock of walking. They reduce the impact that actually reaches the compromised cartilage.
Okay, so what are the specific low-impact movements that build that strength without causing more wear and tear?
The focus has to be on controlled movements that build the quadriceps and hamstrings, often while sitting or lying down, so you take the weight off.
Like what specifically?
Things like chair leg raises, straight leg lifts, heel slides gently work on flexion, hamstring stretches, even just slow controlled walking or using a stationary bike falls into this beneficial category.
And what are the hard don't do this activities?
Anything that involves jumping, any kind of high impact running, or repetitive deep bending. We already mentioned deep squats, but this also means repetitive impact sports.
So the goal is low resistance, high repetition.
Exactly. You're training the muscles for endurance, not for powerlifting.
You know, what really stands out in all the research is this emphasis on consistency over intensity. For a listener who might be feeling overwhelmed already, how critical is that daily commitment?
Consistency is the entire game. I can't stress this enough. The sources emphasize that even a minimal commitment, we're talking 5 to 10 minutes a day, will lead to significant results in pain reduction.
It's basically daily physical therapy for yourself.
That's what it is. If you only exercise once a week, the benefit just diminishes so quickly. The muscles need that consistent, low-level stimulation to stay engaged and supportive. This is not a quick fix. It's a long-term commitment to maintenance.
That makes it feel so much more achievable. Okay, let's pivot and focus inward for a bit. We're talking about the anti-inflammatory toolkit diet, drinks, supplements.
Right, this whole strategy is about fighting systemic inflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation in the body, which is often fueled by a poor diet, absolutely makes joint pain worse.
And there's another layer to it with weight, right?
Yes, if you're carrying extra weight, the fat cells themselves aren't just inert. They actively produce pro-inflammatory chemicals, which just worsens the environment inside the joint.
So we need to be choosing foods that actively calm that inflammation down. What the cornerstones of this kind of diet?
You're looking for omega-3s and antioxidants. So that means fatty fish like salmon and sardines a couple of times a week, using olive oil as your main cooking fat, and snacking on things like nuts and seeds.
And for fruits and veggies.
Think deep colors: berries, oranges, spinach, broccoli. These foods contain compounds that actively interfere with the body's inflammatory pathways.
So if we're pulling all those good foods in, what are the big inflammation triggers we need to be pulling out?
It's the usual suspects, but with a specific focus on joint health. Minimize processed sugars, high fructose corn syrup, refined carbs like white bread.
Fried foods, processed snacks.
All of it. They all just rapidly raise your systemic inflammation levels.
Our sources also highlighted some specific drinks, which I found really interesting as simple daily habits. What should we be sipping on?
Warm beverages packed with natural anti-inflammatories are a great addition. Things like warm turmeric milk curcumin is the active ingredient, ginger tea, and green tea, which is just loaded with antioxidants.
And just basic hydration, I assume.
Foundational. Plenty of plain water, lemon water. And on the flip side, what you have to avoid are the sugary sodas, excess alcohol, and, maybe cutting back on coffee if you notice it triggers discomfort.
Okay, finally, let's quickly touch on the supplement aisle. Glucosamine and chondroitin are always the big topic of conversation. What did the deep dive synthesize about their effectiveness?
We see glucosamine, chondroitin, omega-3s, vitamin D, collagen peptides mentioned constantly. But the critical takeaway from the research is that the results are highly individual.
So it works for some people, but not others.
Exactly. For some, they provide a noticeable reduction in pain. For others, absolutely zero benefit. And unfortunately, science hasn't given us a way to predict who will respond well. They're worth a try for a few months, maybe, but they should never, ever replace the core strategy of exercise and diet.
Okay. So we've covered the whole proactive care model. Let's talk about escalation. What happens when the pain gets to a point where movement and home care just can't keep it under control anymore?
That's when you start talking about medical interventions, specifically injections. And their primary goal is not a cure. It's more like a strategic pause.
A pause, okay. And there are two main types.
Two main types described in the literature. First are the corticosteroid injections. We hear about these a lot for immediate relief.
Right, the cortisone shot.
Exactly. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory agent injected directly into the joint space. It's designed to rapidly shut down acute inflammation and offer temporary release. That could last anywhere from a few weeks to several months.
And the second option?
That would be hyaluronic acid injections. These are different. They're not really anti-inflammatory. They aim to improve the lubrication of the joint fluid itself, make it more viscous, more shock absorbing. They tend to be most helpful in mild to moderate arthritis.
Okay, so if these are both just temporary fixes, how do they fit into the bigger strategy of, say, delaying a major surgery?
And this is the key strategic insight the sources really emphasize. Injections are a tool to enable rehabilitation.
Ah, I see.
If your pain is so severe that you can't do your daily strengthening exercises, an injection can break that pain inhibition cycle. That short window of relief is your chance to really maximize physical therapy, to build up that suspension system we talked about.
And achieve a level of stability that can actually outlast the injection itself.
Precisely. It effectively helps you delay the need for a total joint replacement. It's a bridge to functional movement.
That really reframes the purpose. So that brings us to the final stage, stage 4OA, where there's severe cartilage loss. What are the options then?
At stage 4, daily life is severely compromised. Walking, standing, it all becomes incredibly painful and limited. The focus shifts to more aggressive pain management and just maintaining whatever minimal function you can through ongoing physical therapy.
And if all of that fails?
If all conservative treatments, injections, aggressive PT, everything have failed, then knee replacement surgery, either partial or total, becomes the necessary option to restore quality of life.
Now for the reality check. There's so much stuff online. Headlines promising a cure. What's the objective truth based on our sources?
We have to dismantle that "how I cured my knee" osteoarthritis myth. The truth is direct, and frankly, it needs to be repeated.
Yeah.
OA is a degenerative mechanical condition. It cannot be fully cured.
So any success story you see online is usually what?
It's usually the result of intense, consistent management, not a reversal of the condition.
So if reversal isn't the goal, how should you be measuring your own success?
Success is entirely functional. It means achieving consistent pain control. It means being able to walk farther than you could last month. It means sleeping through the night without that constant knee discomfort. And, most importantly, it means significantly delaying or completely avoiding the need for joint replacement surgery.
It's really validating then. to see that the common wisdom you find everywhere, from clinical guidelines to Reddit support groups, it always converges on the same core advice.
It really does. The synthesis is always a combination. Maintain a healthy weight to reduce the load, consistently strengthen your supporting muscles, combine those physical strategies with an anti-inflammatory diet.
And seek medical support when you need it.
And seek medical support when the pain threshold is breached. It's never one pill or one single action. It's an integrated, consistent lifestyle plan.
That blend of self-care and medical support really brings us to the end of this deep dive. We've tried to give you the strategic roadmap for managing this condition as effectively as possible.
The key action points are simple to say, but do require commitment to execute. Start treating symptoms early. Prioritize those 5 to 10 minutes of daily low-impact movement to build that critical muscle support.
Adopt the anti-inflammatory diet strategy and eliminate those high-impact pain-triggering habits immediately.
That's the core of it.
And as we close, we want to leave you with one last thought based on everything we've covered. Our sources identified weak leg muscles as a key cause and exercise as the primary treatment.
Right. So as strengthening is the solution and a lack of strength is a root cause, then we ask you to consider this. How can you make that 5 to 10 minutes of daily strengthening a truly non-negotiable habit?
Not just to manage the pain you have now,
but to proactively protect the joint health you currently have. That minimal, consistent effort is arguably the most powerful long-term